Last week wasn't the greatest for board game companies. Let's find out why in this week's News Roundup for June 19th, 2023. First, an update for a story from last week. You may recall that one of the stories was about a specific Magic card, the One Ring, where they have a special serialized alternate art where there'll only be one copy of. Many people are trying to find this card, and people are putting out bounties, and last week the highest one was for $1 million. Well, now that's increased as a store in Spain is not only increased it to $2 million, but they have also added in a trip there as well as a meal, so you're going to get a little bit extra if you can find that card. Now, a lot of people are hunting for this, and I believe we just passed the pre-release as of watching this, so you're more likely to see these. In that previous video I mentioned, they're in the collector's boosters. Keep in mind, by the way, those are going, I think, now for around $400 for a full box. And unless you're able to get some of the really rare stuff, because so many people are trying to find this, you're probably not going to break even. So if you're assuming like maybe previous sets where you might open some things and hopefully find some rare cards, unless you get those serialized cards, probably not going to make your money's worth. So either enjoy just playing the lottery or just having some of those alternate art cards. By the way, though, there are other serialized cards. The biggest ones are actually cards based on the other rings of power that the One Ring is supposed to control. And those are actually alternate arts of the Soul Ring card, a classic common Magic card, or now common Magic card, and one of them sold for $13,000, just showing how expensive these can be. Keep in mind though that this is actually a 1 of 700, not a 1 of 1. So if you find any of the other serialized cards, they might actually sell for as much as this one, partially because there's 700 of them, and also not everyone is created equal. Certain numbers, people actually brought this up when the last serialized cards first introduced, are just more expensive. Number 1, 700, the first and last, as well as some other numbers, including 420 and 69, are probably going to fetch a higher price than your other random number. TSR, not the original company created by Gary Gygax that was bought by Wizard, but the new one created by his son, has been quite the controversial company. There is a whole slew of issues that have to deal with the company, including them trying to sue Wizards and then Wizards countersuing them, but it seems that they have run out of steam. TSR has just declared bankruptcy, as apparently in this year, up to this point, they've only made up to $600. Meanwhile, they are currently in debt for a little around $385K. So obviously with those numbers, this is not a viable business. So it seems that this new TSR won't be one that we'll see for long. That said, this does mean that all the court cases going against them, including the big Wizards one, are going to be put on pause until they're able to sort out and sell out whatever assets TSR has in order to pay back whatever debt they can. It does seem, though, however, that once the bankruptcy issues are done, the court case will still continue. So those who were part of the original court cases, I don't think bankruptcy will be able to save them this time. Our next bad news story is now from Cryptozoic, which apparently has not been paying their artists. This actually comes from a Twitter thread from Brazilian artist Marco, who talked about how he has not been paid in months when it comes to the art he provided for Cryptozoic. In his thread, plenty of people responded who were also artists, a good chunk of them also from Brazil as well, who stated how they are still waiting to receive their payment from Cryptozoic as well. Soon after this Twitter thread, Cryptozoic contacted Marco as well as some other artists, stating that they apologized, that they will be wired money very soon, and that this is all because this delay happened because they are pretty much in mourning and also a lot of mix-up and turmoil from the death of their CEO back in February. Now, the CEO's death was sudden, but it still has been quite a bit of time, and you'd think if you're well organized, you can get things corrected, fixed, and make sure your accounts are all in order. And what doesn't also help is this is not the first time this has happened at Cryptozoic. Apparently, there have been other instances, including one just as recent as 2021, where they have not paid their artists. Many people have pointed out that the people who are not getting paid are those who are more contractual workers, not actual employees who receive a usual salary working at Cryptozoic's own headquarters. So this is something that hopefully these people actually finally get paid, but it isn't the greatest look for Cryptozoic right now. Now let's talk about the Embracer Group. I talked a little while ago about how they reported a not so great last year and quarter, even though board games seem to do relatively well for them. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem it's enough, as they are now planning some major restructuring, and that will include some layoffs as well as some closures of some companies or selling them off and some future projects. Now, in terms of the layoffs, we don't know the exact numbers yet, so we'll see what happens. They did say that it's going to be more of an even spread, but odds are if you're part of the companies that they're closing or selling, you're probably going to be more affected there. They did say this will affect all of their areas as well, so even though, like I mentioned earlier, the board game area was doing well, they're probably going to get hit there as well. They did state that while there are going to be some projects removed, canceled, shelved, that these are going to be ones that are unannounced. So odds are if there's something you already know about, it's probably safe. That said, it's because they said that this is going to hit everything. I am a little bit worried as, like I said, this is going to hit everyone. And in Asmodee's case, one of their biggest ones is Fantasy Flight. And I already feel like compared to the old Fantasy Flight that I used to know, that they've already been trimmed down quite a bit. I feel like they had a much larger catalog with a variety of different games, and now it's really down to just a few LCGs. So I'm really worried what's going to happen there, but we'll see, and maybe it's going to be more of some of those other companies that aren't going to have as much big booth space or aren't talked about as much. But do expect to hear some shakeups for any game that is owned by Asmodee, so probably 50% of the Gen Con floor. And now for some game announcements. First, SkyTeam, which is meant to simulate a cockpit of a passenger ship where you and your co-pilots will try to fly the plane safely, will actually start being sold at Gen Con. Then Hasbro has announced a new mashup game between Scrabble and Monopoly titled Monopoly Scrabble, in which you'll actually use Scrabble in creating words in order to move and buy properties. Then we have a new hero pack for Marvel Champions, this one featuring X-23, the female Wolverine clone child. I can't remember what it is in this current timeline. Anyways, you can pick that up to add to your hero roster. Then we have another book for the Vampire Masquerade RPG series titled Bloodstained Love. And finally, this is an update rather than a new release. Puerto Rico 1897 was actually initially sold at the beginning of this year, but it was missing pieces and had some typos, so they actually stopped production of it. And now the new edition of it, I guess you could say, with all the right corrections, will be sold later on this fall. But that's all the news we have this week. A lot of bad news when it comes to some companies, but good news if you're hunting that ring. Let me know if you're going for it and trying to get that now sweet $2 million. I'd love to hear all your thoughts in the comments down below. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week on the News Roundup.